You can access the entire episode now on our website, forbiddenknowledge.news, Rokfin, Rumble, and all podcast platforms. Today we're going to get into your latest book, The Crystal Lattice Mind Illusion. Now, this provides evidence that consciousness is the true driving force in the universe, creating our material reality. And you present some extremely compelling connections, including the possibility of a reptilian brain network, possibly preventing us from reaching our true consciousness potential. Now, there's a lot to get into today. You got a presentation for us. Before we get into it, remind the audience just a little bit about yourself and what brought you to write this book.
Yeah, sure. So I've been researching the occult, the occult, esoteric, conspiratorial for about 15 years now. It's been a big part of my life throughout the years in many different ways. The past 2 years in particular, I've been dropping documentaries, videos, and books all under the name or brand Esoteric Eddie. And it's been a fun journey. But this recent book all came kind of together spontaneously after I had a flash of the entire book and the entire concept while I was at work one day. I had just published my Anunnaki book last year, and I was kind of in between work, and I was deciding what I wanted my next big project to be. And at the time, I thought it was going to be a book about Werner von Braun and his prophecies, and I might still do that, but one day at work, I just had this flash, and I saw this entire book and the name and everything, and I knew that this is what I had to write. And I've always been fascinated with consciousness and psychology and spiritualism and stuff like that, so it was pretty natural for me to write this book as well, with that already being a passion of mine.
Excellent, man. Yeah. Now, that you'd say it was a sort of like a download of this immediate creative inspiration. I've had these before where it's just, you know what's going to come out. You don't even try, because for me, whenever I'm doing something creative and I attempt to tap into something or I attempt to force that out, it never happens. If I just let something come to me, that is the best result. And I've interviewed plenty of people who have written complete books from these incredible downloads. What do you think is actually happening there? Do you think you're tapping into like this Akashic data stream or your higher self or something else? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a mix of all of that, but I think in this case in particular, it was just me tapping into my higher self, because time is not linear. So I think when we start meditating or focusing in on higher frequencies or certain concepts through manifestation, we're just tapping into those timelines or that higher self that already holds that knowledge and kind of just gives us that flash or that download.
Right on. Well, let's get into your presentation. Sure. You can probably give us a better synopsis of the book yourself. So what is the Crystal Lattice? Let's get into it.
All right, let's do it. Yeah, we got a lot to move through, so I'll just get this presentation going. Give me a moment here.
There we go.
All right. Is everything looking good on that end?
Looks good.
Okay, so let me see here. View. Here we go. All right, the Crystal Lattice Mind Illusion. So I start the book off and this presentation with a quote from Carl Jung, which I think is very important and pretty much sums up this entire book, as you'll see. And the quote is here verbatim: "The word archetype is thoroughly characteristic of the structural forms that underlie consciousness as the crystal lattice underlies the crystallization process." And basically what he's saying there is that just how in physical life, in the material world, underlying all of this, there are structures, microscopic structures that make up the entirety of it. The mind as well works off of these smaller structures. And I'll be diving into that and expanding more on that, but it's an important thing to keep in mind here. So starting with the Crystal Lattice Mind Illusion, I like to break apart the mind illusion part of it first. So in this life, we're under the illusion, most of us are under the illusion that we're just one unit, we're just one being, I'm just Eddie, and that's it. But that itself is not true, because we are at least two different things. We are a mind and we are a body. And so the illusion part starts there, is that we often just think of ourselves as one unit. But as we'll get into, even the mind and body have several units at the very least. I mean, the body itself is running off of, millions, if not billions, of moving parts if you count all the cells and everything. And the mind, as I'll get into, also has different parts. And again, that's kind of what Carl Jung was trying to say through that quote, is that just as the crystal forms through a series of codes and smaller moving parts, so does our reality get formulated through all these different moving parts in the mind. Now, in this universe, or in this matrix that we live in, we have what I call central reality. Now, central reality is the matrix that is perpetuated by the globalist, the shadowy elite, the reptilian brain network, as I'll also demonstrate. And as we all have our individual reality, but there is a central reality that these globalists attempt to indoctrinate us into. And that's going to be a very central theme throughout this entire presentation as well, to keep in mind. And just as we have a individual subconscious or subpsyche, we also have a collective subconscious or subpsyche. And it is in that collective subpsyche where some very fascinating things can occur in our life. And Carl Jung talked about this, and there are other examples of this. One example would be the miracle of Fatima. And in short, the miracle of Fatima was this event that happened over in Portugal back in this early 1900s. There was these three kids who claimed to have came across the Virgin Mary. So the Virgin Mary came across these kids and gave them a prophecy, a series of prophecies, and to which I believe the last one has yet to be fulfilled. But shortly after these kids went around, preaching these prophecies or whatever, shortly after that, in Portugal, about 70,000 people witnessed what they explained as the sun dancing around and darting around the sky, even shooting down like really close to the earth and going back, and all these weird things, and also claiming to have seen the Virgin Mary in the sky.
Now, didn't they also report like physical effects, like burns or some sort of sunburn from this event?
I believe so. I don't
That's
know
crazy, man.
off the top right now, but
Yeah.
you might be right. Yeah, and so this is an example of the collective subpsyche being able to create these crazy experiences that otherwise would not be possible in our central reality. And so that's evidence right there that the mind is much more powerful than we are being led to believe.
So you think that what we could understand as a lot of paranormal activity, some sort of manifestations that occur, could be a collective hallucination in a way?
Yes, absolutely. And it's not so much that it's not real, it's that our mind is much more powerful.
It's probably more like this reality isn't real, and it's just interacting with us in a way that it naturally does in this kind of matrix-like reality, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I'll get into, what it also points to is that we could all use our minds together to create certain realities.
Right.
And so again, Carl Jung has his own example of this, which he demonstrates in his book titled Flying Saucers, A Modern Myth of Things Seen in the Skies, which is an amazing book. And in his book, he postulates the possibility that UFOs were a mass hallucination. And he believes that these UFOs that we started seeing in the early or during the mid 20th century were a result of the world wars and a result of everybody collectively expecting an apocalypse